try and do the business the women way, it's way less of a competition
Hmm.
because less women do business. Most women try to do business the men's way. If you try to run your business the way that nobody else does, have less competition.
Welcome back to another episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Angela Mishuli, and thank you for joining me on this episode today, where I have an interview with Katie Ananina, also known as Katie the Russian, the founder and CEO of Plan B Passport. I am so honored that I am the first female-led podcast she has been interviewed on. She has had great success in her business, been featured on Fox Business and CNBC and other business news outlets. And she shares her story on how she immigrated to the US and started and grew her business in my interview that I'm going to share with you today. There is so much to learn from Katie's experience. First, I want to invite you, if you're loving this content, to please leave us a review. That helps other mompreneurs find the podcast, and it also lets us know that we're creating content that resonates with you. Then, number two, please share this podcast with anybody that you know who might find it helpful. And then three, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. I think it's really important to recap some of the things that you're going to learn in this episode and why it's so important that you listen to this interview with Katie. So she talks about some really important things about starting and growing your business through extreme adversity. She talks about recognizing where you can fill the weaknesses and gaps in the market with your businesses, and how to turn challenges into something to be grateful for. We also talk about how to market your business in a way that aligns with you and your business philosophy. The importance of finding and having a micro niche and how to do that. We talk about handling criticism, overcoming imposter syndrome, learning to prioritize, delegate, and hire in your business, as well as managing stress versus managing time. And all of those things really fit into learning how to scale your business. And then also, we talk about the strengths that women and moms in particular bring to business leadership and operations, and how to determine what you should be paid, and then also how to increase what you're paid. So Katie has really wonderful insights on all of those topics, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Without further ado, here's my interview with Katie Ananina. Welcome, Katie Ananina, to the podcast. Thank you for spending time with me. I think you have a really unique story and something we can all learn and from your background and what you're going through right now as an immigrant mompreneur. So you're the CEO of Plan B Passport. It's an investment migration company. And, as I mentioned, you're an immigrant mompreneur. So welcome to the podcast.
Absolutely honored to be here. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about Plan B Passport. I'm so interested in like how this works and how you came up with the idea.
Yeah. So I'm an immigrant myself. And
Mm-hmm.
throughout my immigration journey, first of all, I was absolutely abandoned by my immigration lawyer. The moment she got paid, she stopped answering my phone calls and emails. So I had to self-represent my case as a 21-year-old immigrant who barely speaks English. So
Wow.
that was the experience that just, made me believe in myself. And I got so much education through my own case that I realized that, hey, I can help people do that. But
Mm-hmm.
also, what really made me realize the philosophy now behind Plan B passport is that sometimes as an immigrant, I can have more rights in a country than local citizens, and I can get away with more things. For example, funny example, my dad has Florida driver license
Uh-huh.
because he spent a lot of used to spend a lot of time here in the States. When he gets pulled over in Russia, he shows his Florida driver license, and my dad barely speaks any English. He says, "No Russian, American citizen." And the policeman just doesn't know what to do. He takes a picture with my dad because he thinks that's an American dude, and he lets my dad go. And like this is a very small example of jurisdictional arbitrage, which is literally the concept behind Plan B passport.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are many ways to basically the idea behind Plan B passport, called flag theory, the concept of flag theory. The way I define this is a way to limit your dependency on any one particular state by obtaining flags, quote unquote, such as citizenship, residency, bank account, etc., in different jurisdictions for your benefits. So, for example, us living in the United States, uh, you may have seen what's been happening with banking in the US.
Oh,
Basically,
sure.
Silicon Valley Bank going down, Signature Bank going down. What if you were to have an emergency bank account offshore in which you can still transfer money from your brokerage account, or you can have emergency funds in case the banking system collapses here in the US?
Mm-hmm.
You have access to funds somewhere, let's say in Dubai or offshore in the Caribbean islands,
Mm-hmm.
just again as an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where female perspective kind of comes into account. We're all about family security and safety. And like having a plan B is really important to us because we don't want to be in a moment of crisis. We don't want to stress about it. We
Mm-hmm.
can just install the plan B option and sleep better at night unless you have a
Wow.
board.
So how does that work? I mean, it sounds like it's a little complicated, so maybe like a general idea because and who can like apply for a Plan B passport? Can Americans do that?
Yeah.
Wow.
So my company specifically focused on investment migration. There are many ways to obtain different flags,
Mm-hmm.
such as citizenship and residency. I'm
Mm-hmm.
specifically focused on investment options. There are a few countries in the world that have very precise, very streamlined citizenship by investment program installed as a policy. And the way it works, you either donate money into government fund, or
Mm-hmm.
you purchase real estate in a country, or your invest in countries' bonds. And on this basis, you obtain a citizenship, aka passport too. So just an example, St. Kitts, one of the most popular citizenship by investment programs in the world, has been in place for decades now. The way it works is, let's say you and your family, let's say main applicant, spouse, and two kids apply for four passports.
Mm-hmm.
You either donate $170,000 into government's fund, or you purchase at least $220,000 worth of real estate. And on this basis, you are now qualified for citizenship. It's a very extensive paperwork, and that's where we come into play because if you don't have experience in immigration or specifically citizenship by investment programs, it will be pretty complicated. But we put together your case, prepare your paperwork, fill up all the government forms, and in a matter of 5 to 12 months, you basically get a passport in the mail. It's an absolutely legal process. It's a government policy installed into place. You don't have to visit the island. You don't have to live on the island. You just basically, through pure capitalism, obtain a second citizenship, which is absolutely legal in the US. United States is a country of immigrants, so
Mm-hmm.
dual citizenship absolutely allowed.
Right.
There's nothing to prevent that can prevent you from that. And now you have a plan B option.
Wow, that's fascinating. And I mean, like you said, this is something that really can empower people, but especially women if they need this plan for their family to help ensure their safety. I mean, that's really fascinating. So what so I guess your journey gave you the idea for this? Is
Yeah,
that
I've always
mhm.
been very freedom oriented. Like I always wanted to bring more power to individual because I
Mm-hmm.
think that governments all over the world have like got an overreach. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also just growing up in post-Soviet Russia, where like that gave me a pretty good perspective. So I was on a national team in Russia since I was 11 years old for
Mm-hmm.
sailing.
Mm-hmm.
And even as a professional sailor, I always had troubles going to Europe Championship or World Championship
Mm-hmm.
because my passport was so weak. I needed a visa to go everywhere. And then I
Mm-hmm.
had those visas rejected, even so I had an official invitation from Europe Championship to go and participate. So
Mm-hmm.
that gave me a really good perspective on like different passports have different powers, and maybe having a Russian passport is not
The
really,
best.
yeah, not the best for sure. And over the last 2 years, this passport got even weaker because now we're just not welcome anywhere. Didn't like, despite me not being cool with Russian politics at all, I'm still, I still have my Russian passport and I have to go around it and find my way to still live my life without this hard dependency on the
Mm-hmm.
politics of the country that I'm not part of anymore, even.
Wow. That's, yeah, I mean, that's something that we don't really have to deal with as in the US, especially, I don't know if you've run into this, but so many fewer people have passports in the US than in, Europe or other countries. Is Can you talk to that? Like, how does that affect your business, or what's your perspective on that?
So yeah, a lot of Americans never get their passport because they never have to leave the country. America has so much land and so much different options for travel and vacations. You can go from a lot of snow in the mountains to the beach in a matter of a couple hours. So,
Mm-hmm.
and also, it's very understandable. America has been a leading country in so many ways in the world that there's just no point to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And that almost is a bad thing in a way because that made the American government very comfortable with themselves. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's the saying that good times create weak men create bad times create strong man create good times.
Hmm.
So I'm wondering if we're at the point where we had we in America, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
had such good times for so long that we don't even anticipate things going bad anymore.
Mm.
Like, let's look at the inflation.
Mm-hmm.
People from countries like Russia, Lebanon, Turkey, Venezuela, we know everything about hyperinflation. We're
Right.
well hedged against that because we know it's coming. Like in
Mm-hmm.
my time life, I had three hyperinflations in my home country alone.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even talking about Turkey, Lebanon, and Venezuela, who got it way worse.
Oh yeah.
So now, over the last couple of years, Americans like, whoa, what is this inflation thing? I've never heard of it. My grandparents never had to deal with that. My parents never had to deal with that. What's going on and why my groceries bill keep rising?
Mm-hmm.
So hedging against inflation was just inbuilt in my core ever since I was born. While here in the US, we're not prepared for that. So
Mm-hmm.
because we never thought of that, we never had to hedge against that, and we kind of gave an opportunity for government to just keep printing money that
Mm-hmm.
causes inflation. Um, that's basically what I'm getting into. Like they realize that we're so okay with whatever they do because we had it for so good. We have so much
Mm-hmm.
trust in the government that
Mm-hmm.
we let them get away with things that we maybe shouldn't have. That's
Yeah. I mean, for sure, I could definitely see that as a potential downfall. And too, I know in my own personal entrepreneurial journey that more adversity makes you stronger and able to kind of pivot with where the world is going. I mean, we all had to learn how to do that a few years ago.
yep, exactly.
but but what I find so interesting too is your creative approach to your business and how you didn't take a traditional marketing approach to growing it and starting it. It sounds like. So tell me more about that because I find that so interesting.
Yeah, I always like to find the weaknesses that not the weaknesses, okay, the challenges that I had at the moment and
Uh-huh.
turn them into something to be grateful for, to appreciate for. For example, the lawyer abandoning me really gave me a good start for the business, right?
Right.
That's one of the things. The inflation that I had in Russia made me really prepared to what I'm going through here now in the US. So back then, I just didn't have any funds, any capital to go
Hmm.
traditional route and do some Google Ads, pay per click, or write tons of content.
Right.
I had to be creative. And again,
Hmm.
it's almost like a blessing because yeah, I would have gotten to the same point as I am now, probably in a matter of the same time as of now. I would just had to spend
Way more.
a lot more money. Yeah.
Right.
The way I did it is well, I hired somebody to make my website, and because I had experience building websites for people before, I
Hmm.
could really weigh in on what I want to see there. That was
Mm.
just something that I had experience with. But I went ahead and realized that Twitter is a really great audience that very much aligned with me philosophically. I'm not that big on Instagram. I'm not that
Hmm.
big on YouTube. I barely participate in those social media, but on Twitter, I'm extremely active. And this
Mm.
is where I was able to get a reach. This is where I was able to go viral quite a few times. This is how
Hmm.
I reached platforms like I was on Folks Business, I've been on CNBC, and that all came from Twitter.
So, what is it about Twitter that aligns with your philosophy? What is it? Because I think often as an entrepreneur, you don't need to jump into marketing and social media on every platform. You can't do all the things. So, what is it about Twitter that, you felt aligned with?
Well, just even look at the last 20 minutes of our podcast. I kept talking about politics, finances,
Ah,
inflation. Where is this audience from? They're definitely
right,
not on Instagram. They are on Twitter.
right. Mm-hmm.
So the topics of my interest are there.
Mm.
And again, I got on Twitter even before I started my business,
Mm-hmm.
but then I realized that I just have a crazy good opportunity there. And I already had a little bit of an audience, but I also grew my audience through the business a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One thing that I realized, I didn't realize it back then, but I know it now for sure, that the best way to grow quick on social media is to find your micro niche that is so radical compared to everything else on social media. Because you can be an average in a topic that everybody talks about, or you can
Mm-hmm.
be very good in a topic that grows that is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're just one point in a pretty huge supply
Mm-hmm.
that social media has to offer. If you have a very radical opinion in the micro niche sphere,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably going to be the only one there. And then the audience that follows you for the specific thing will help you grow.
Mm-hmm.
Because for them, you're the first person that comes to mind. They will spread your ideas throughout, and you will have such a higher reach than you would have had if you had like a common opinion in a common supply of opinions, basically. So I
Yeah.
always say find something that you're really passionate about that is
Mm-hmm.
in micro niche and that would be considered pretty radical by many people. And that
So,
was
yeah, I mean, I think that that's great. And I think also taking a controversial opinion. If you're just agreeing with everybody else, you're going to blend in, right? So, what's an example of maybe from yourself or another idea of what a micro niche is? Because I think a lot of people get really scared when they hear the word niche. Because I don't know how it is anywhere else. I think, especially in the US, women and especially moms are kind of conditioned not to offend anyone. And so and I think entrepreneurs, if they don't know any better, try to appeal to everyone, right? So
yep.
they are afraid of niching down. So can you give an example of how either you discovered it or what your niche is? And
Yeah. One way to look at it as like probably everybody has a little understanding of Reddit. So
mm-hmm.
imagine a Reddit community. So
Okay.
in the world of like in the overall world, in all the people you could have potential reach with your business, find one Reddit community. Again, that's just a metaphor.
Uh-huh.
Find somebody who would be very aligned on a very specific topic with you. For example, I recently talked to a friend of mine who recently became doula and trying to reach a larger audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her, okay, look, there are a lot of great doulas.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find your micro niche because again, like let's say on average women have 2-3 pregnancies in their lifetime,
Mm-hmm.
so it's only 2-3 doulas they will ever choose. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they will proceed with the same one, and out of a supply of 50 doulas that I currently follow in Instagram, I have to pick you. It's not going to be because you have better pictures on Instagram. It's not going to be because you're more consistent even with your Instagram. It's probably going to be because I connected with you on a very specific thing and I vibed with you.
Mm-hmm.
So from like as I started brainstorming with her, I remember that how she had a great story and a great experience of
Mm-hmm.
the first time she had C-section in a hospital and wasn't able to breastfeed, and second time she had a home birth, nursed to very long time, and had completely different approach to raising her child.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an interesting story. But what I noticed that she is now highly against sleep training.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Yeah.
may agree or not, I may agree or not. This is something that she's specifically extremely passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very controversial topic,
Mm-hmm.
but this is something that she can connect with other people on. And she has experience to say, I was the other way. I did it differently first, and now I do it this way. And she can look at both perspectives, and she does not hesitate to say that she's against sleep training.
Mm-hmm.
So I would recommend her to do something like this. And again, you gotta be ready to receive hate. If it's
Right.
like, you just gotta be ready for it. And again, that's why it's so much easier to have the topic that you're so passionate about and so
You just
sure about
don't
that.
care.
Yeah, you don't care. The hate just bounce out of you, and
Right.
you just keep proceeding with your belief.
Uh-huh.
So not only you trying to choose a niche, just make sure it actually really is aligned with you, because otherwise it's going to be really tough. It's going to be tough to write content. It's going to be tough to hold your opinion. You're going to be
Mm-hmm.
always second guessing yourself. Imposter syndrome will come in. But if you really believe that, go girl.
I love conversations like this because I didn't think that this conversation was going to go down that road. But I think that that's so helpful to any mom starting a business. And that is such a sticking point, is just really finding where they align and what, they really believe and are passionate about in whatever they're doing. So I love that. I think it's such great advice because you really, they get into this trap of like the visuals to try to stand out. And yep, I think I've heard it multiple times, and I think that you're spot on. And so starting your business, I mean, you barely spoke English and, you weren't a mom yet. You were new in this country. Like, what was that like? Like, I can't imagine like going to a foreign country and having the audacity to start a business.
Yeah, you know how people go into counseling and they work through childhood trauma? So I go into counseling and I'm working through immigration trauma.
I love that.
Yeah, the first year of immigration was like the darkest times of my life.
Oh
And
gosh.
again, I'm very appreciative of this
Sure.
experience. It was great for me. It made me stronger, made me realize that I can get through everything, through
Right.
anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it was pretty hard. On top of my immigration attorney dropping the ball on me, I also had United States Immigration Unit lose my green card. Once I got approved, everything was done. They shipped it to me over
Uh-huh.
UPS. I never received it, USPS. So then they kept looking for it for a year. So here I am with no work authorization, no green card, nothing. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So that was pretty tough. Um,
Wow.
but I don't know. I chose this route. I knew what I
Mm-hmm.
was going for. Immigration is not easy
Mm-hmm.
unless you just have a lot of money and you already have an international business set up and you can just travel the world, which I've
Sure,
done too.
yeah.
I've been there too. I've moved to Mexico for a while and rode
Uh-huh.
the COVID wave in
Uh-huh.
Mexico, chilling on a rooftop.
Nice.
Yeah, that was tough. I knew what I was going for. I
Mhm.
was full of energy. I was a 21-year-old girl.
Right.
I did a lot of right things. Like, for example, I know a lot of immigrants who just keep living an immigrant life for the rest of their lives
Mhm.
because they find a community of people from their home country. They work on the same language.
Mhm.
They hang out with the same people. They never learn English. They never understand the mentality of the country or
Mhm.
policies of the country, etc. So they came as immigrants, they die as immigrants, which is,
Mm.
that's their choice, no
Yeah.
judgment. But I
Mhm.
really wanted to integrate myself into the US life, US business. So
Mm.
right away I started making friends, English speaking only. I took some classes, continuing studies in Stanford because that really pushed me out of my comfort zone.
Mhm.
I just I just kept challenging myself
Wow.
for a while, and yeah, here I am. I didn't speak any English 7 years ago, and now I think I'm proficient.
Oh, yeah. And I was going to mention that. I know some immigrant entrepreneurs, and it seems like they're always self-conscious about their English, regardless of the people who tell them they sound fine, there's no problem. I mean, is that something that you kind of struggled with or
Sometimes I even play the immigrant card and start talking with very strong accent if it suits me best. Yeah, but overall, there were hard times. When I first
hmm
started on Twitter, my grammar was pretty bad. I
hmm
really wanted to make a point across, but instead of spending, 2 minutes on a 280 characters, I would spend 20 minutes trying to understand, does it sound English? Like
mm,
me just directly translating Russian into English and it makes no sense for for
mm,
English speaking native. But again, I just went for it. Like when you have no choice,
right,
it's almost like you're in a better position. I had nothing to
right.
lose. I didn't have other options.
hmm
Kind of pushed me further out of my comfort zone. Twitter helped me learn English for sure.
So you came to the US wanting to be an entrepreneur?
I was raised as an entrepreneur. When I
Oh,
was
gotcha.
9, I had my first little business, and I made $1,000 over one weekend. So my parents,
Wow.
coming out from Soviet Union,
Uh-huh.
going through the privatization of properties, like
hmm
until 1991, everything was owned by government.
Right.
So there was no entrepreneurs. There was just government-run industries, monopoly.
hmm
So my parents were like the first entrepreneurs in my city. Even so, they had very traditional education. My dad was a prosecutor, and my mom was a music teacher.
hmm
They realized that they could convert their knowledge into being entrepreneurs pretty quickly, and
Really?
they inbuilt those values into me and my sister. Neither of us ever worked in a traditional career because we don't know how, because we thought the only way to make money in the post-Soviet Russia is by being entrepreneurs. So, yeah, ever since I was 9, it's a pretty interesting story, I think.
I
So
love
I'm
that.
9, my sister is 14 years old,
hmm
and we went to a town 300 kilometers to 200 miles away from our town and
hmm
bought some rave bracelets, like you wear them and they're like shining.
Flow and yeah.
Yeah,
hmm
so we bought a bunch of those, and then here's a country music festival happening in our hometown.
In
I'm
Russia?
like, yes, or like Russian country music, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm just
Okay.
So we go to this festival and we start selling those bracelets for like 10x of the cost.
hmm
So in the first day, we made pretty good money. I mean, for a 9-year-old, that was like a year supply of pocket money. So we're like, this is cool, but the festival keeps going for another 3 days, but we are out of product. So here comes my mom and like, well, you need to drive 200 miles back and 200 miles back and forth, basically. You need to purchase it all and be there back by night to go sell them again, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's like, well, you can't drive, right? I'm like, yeah. So you gotta go convince dad. And that was the first negotiating experience for me. I had to go and say, Dad, you really need to give us a ride back and forth right now. We have
Mm-hmm.
money to go purchase the new products. And he said, well, what's in it for me?
Right.
Like, where is my cut?
Right.
So we had to write a contract. And again, my parents are
That's
preparing us for the business, right?
awesome.
So
Yeah.
writing a contract saying that if dad takes us back and forth, we will
Mm-hmm.
buy him a fishing stick, a new fishing stick. My dad is huge into fishing. He's like, okay, that's a valid point. So that's what we did. He gave us a ride. We got him a fishing stick. And over the next 3 days, we made $1,000 each. In Russia back then,
That was like
like
a millionaire.
it's huge money.
Yeah.
And I was already a sailor. I was going to a sailing club, and
Mm-hmm.
our sailing club barely had any good boats. They're not competitive level at all. So I spent that $1,000 for a small sailboat that allowed me to go compete at nationals. And like as you
Mm-hmm.
know, I got into a national team a year later. And that's how I moved to the United States. United States gave me a green card because of my abilities in sailing.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's an incredible story. And I think it's just all a testament to just following your heart and just kind of going with, it sounds like you're like many other entrepreneurs I've talked to who just have this knowing that you're supposed to go in this direction, like this voice.
There's also one part of my character, disagreeableness, that really helps.
I'm not sure I know an entrepreneur that doesn't have
Yeah.
that side to them, who just like will fight for freedom and their ability to do what they want.
Yep.
Like, I
Yeah,
can definitely identify with that for sure. So, how long was it before you started your business and then you found out you were pregnant and then you started establishing this life?
yeah. So 4 years ago, I started this business. It took me a while to go over like still some imposter syndrome. I was not ready
Oh,
to
yeah.
scale the company yet. Like
Mm-hmm.
I could take on little clients here and there, but
Mm-hmm.
it was still so much learning that I just couldn't expand my offerings to many people because it would take me 10 times of what I need now in order to prepare the case and do everything.
Gotcha.
So took me some time, but the company started growing, and then I met my husband and I got pregnant. And funny enough, this is when business really blew up.
Right.
On my second trimester, I had consulting calls from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. every day, and my consulting calls are 30 minutes long. And I just got so booked up that I just couldn't drop anybody. I really wanted to go that and do that. And thank God I had so much energy in my second trimester. I was
Right.
thriving. I did not mind those consulting calls all day.
Wow.
I did want to sleep a lot. So
Right.
if in some cases consulting calls end up short, like 15 minutes instead of
Mm-hmm.
30, I would go take a nap because from home is convenient. 12-minute nap, alarm goes off, you run back, turn on the camera,
Right.
turn on the lights, you're back to work.
Oh my gosh. So was being that busy help you kind of get through that imposter syndrome? Like you didn't even have time to think about it?
At this point, I already really gained confidence, I'd say.
Gotcha.
I already had a lot of people who completed the full process and received their passports.
Hmm.
That also happened. Like the reason I blew up so crazy is because I got on Folks Business, CNBC, and the best investment podcast in the UK, top one on Spotify. And that also like makes you appreciate what you've done,
Right.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, if they see me as an expert, maybe I am.
Right.
So that really
Exactly.
helps.
Right. But you just kept doing things to get traction. Like you
Yeah.
weren't hiding from those opportunities. That was your goal, right?
Yeah,
So
and
go ahead.
like imagine me in the second trimester, 7 a.m. I'm on Fox Business. The night
Right.
before I was throwing up. So here I am. It was extremely out of my comfort zone. Like it's not that I was so confident I'm just gonna crush this interview.
Right.
Absolutely not. I was pissing my pants at the moment. But I went for it because what do I have to lose? Like people are gonna think that
Right.
I speak with strong accent or they're gonna disagree with my expertise. Whatever.
Right.
Whatever. I have a husband that loves me. I have my parents that are so supportive.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most important.
Right. Nothing to lose. Yeah. I mean, so was there anything specifically that kind of helped you get through that initial imposter syndrome, or, you just kept going despite it?
Gaining expertise definitely helps. There is always a point where you realize that you can answer any question that client comes from your client
Yeah.
absolutely without searching for information, confirming it. It's just all in your head, and you realize that okay, I'm really
Right.
an expert. That
Right.
really helps.
Mm-hmm.
Also, not being afraid of not knowing something.
Mm.
Like when I realized how much information there is in the industry, I was like, wait a
Right.
second, nobody knows everything. And that
Right.
is true about everything. That's in
That's
any
true.
industry you're in, you will
Right.
never just remember the whole thing. And just being like, hey, I can't answer this question right now, but I know where to find this information.
Mm-hmm.
So like just knowing where to find the right answer is already an expertise.
Right.
So that was definitely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And just the more I kept talking about it, the more people shared how appreciative they are about the information that I constantly
Yeah.
share.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like people are thankful for what I'm doing. So I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, I can identify with all of those things in my own journey. And two, there's just got to be this point where you trust yourself to be
Yeah.
able to find the answers. And a lot of people don't have that self trust. So people will gravitate to somebody who confidently just kind of talks to them and gives them a sense of like, this is going to be okay, or we can handle this for sure. So how did things change once you had a baby? Like, how has it been? Because that's so interesting to go. Lots of moms have a business after pregnancy because they find themselves in a situation where they don't want to send them to daycare, or they don't want to go back to work. They want to have a more flexible schedule. So I'd love to hear about how that has been different.
Yeah. So the business started growing. I had to hire more people regardless, right?
Right.
So the timing was perfect. I was about 25 weeks pregnant when I
Mm-hmm.
hired two people, one of which I had to fire like 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
That it just didn't work out. Um, and the other one really came through. She's now my business partner, my best friend.
Oh, that's great.
She really grew into much more than just being an employee back then. Um, yeah, so I hired her when I was 25 weeks, and I thought that I have a lot of time to prepare everything, and then like take a couple weeks off after I had the baby. But then I had the baby early. I had
Oh, of
3 months.
course.
I had to go into NICU.
Oh.
Yeah, instead of having my home birth plan that I planned. So yeah, here I am. We just moved into a house. We just bought a house. We
Mhm.
have nothing but a bed, and I go into labor. And I still have consulting calls, but what was convenient is that I went into labor on December 30th. So
Oh,
during
it's like a
New Year
holiday.
times,
Right.
it really
You're
worked
like,
out. Yeah. But what's funny is I recently went back and trying to remember my experiences from the hospital. I was like, wait a second. I remember sending an email from a hospital bed. And I went back and I found this email
uh-huh.
4 hours after I had the baby. And I'm like responding to a client. And I was
Right.
like, this was something in my brain, some hormones definitely, because that's a not normal behavior. But I guess that's what I wanted to do in a moment. And I just did it.
Hmm.
And then I stayed at home, like I'm working from home, and for 5 months I didn't have like designated help. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really helpful to have this newly hired girl, Jessica,
Mm-hmm.
who came and stayed with us in the house for like a month at a time, and we just knocked work off together while I'm nursing the baby on a bed. It was perfect. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, that really worked out.
that's fabulous. I mean, so at some point, did you ever feel like, oh, I need to take a break or this is too much? Because I think a lot of moms feel that way too. So did
Yeah.
you deal with that?
There were some points of it. I say that I had pretty easy postpartum. I was very lucky to have no problems, health-wise, energy-wise, mental health-wise.
Mm,
I felt very strongly through the whole postpartum experience, but I did obviously have to set up some priorities and
right.
delegate.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I realized there are a few things that I don't have to do. Like other people can do it if I educate them. And
Mm-hmm.
I had to highlight, like find the outline those things in my business. Like one of them was sending the commercial emails after the initial call. Like
Mm,
they talk to me, so they expect an email from me. That was my thinking. They
mm-hmm.
don't expect. They just expect the information that you promised them.
Right.
And your executive assistant can definitely do that. So I
Yeah.
provided her with all the templates. I
Mm-hmm.
would basically voice message like, hey, this is what we talked about. Make sure to send this calculations, this policy, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to delegate that. Um, and also I had to find things that make me stressed. Like it was even more about, not more about time, it was more about the stress that I had
Mm-hmm.
behind few tasks that I've always been stressed about. So when you try to scale your business, my first advice is find the things that you hate when you're in your business.
Yeah.
It might be one little thing that takes you 40 minutes a day that could be easily delegated, but you hate it so much that it really prevents you from growing. Like
Right.
if you find those things and delegate them, you'll be
Mm-hmm.
amazed how your business grows.
Mm.
So I constantly try to rethink that point. Like 2 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, let's find again. What am I stressed about the most? Because that holds your negative energy and like
Yeah.
that really holds you back. This negative energy just spreads through everything else, even so it's such a tiny point in your business. Just
Right.
just outline that, get it out of the way. Um, yeah, and then I was able to find really good help. At first, it was just 10 hours a week because the baby spent so much time sleeping. I was totally able to
Right.
handle everything. Then
Mm-hmm.
it just kept scaling, and then I was able to find absolutely amazing help that just spends a lot, like 30 hours a week with us in the house, helping with all
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things. And that really
Mm-hmm.
provides me with ability to focus on the business,
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about anything else.
Yeah. I mean, people do get kind of caught up in thinking about time management and not thinking about managing their energy, which is so important because, like you said, it can just free you up to accomplish and like learn and grow in different ways. If you free yourself up from tasks that really drain you.
Yes. I'm all
Um,
about do what you love.
right.
That's the reason I wasn't able to ever build a career because I don't love working a traditional job because I feel like some things are inefficient. I want them to be my way. So I choose entrepreneurship. But what's the point if you again do things not your way?
Right.
Like you chose this journey to be your own boss. Do it
Right.
the way you want it, not the way
Right.
internet tells you, not the way people expect you, not the way your subconscious trying to lie
Mhm.
to you. Like, come on, do it your way.
Yeah.
The moment you hate something, something is off. The moment your business is not aligned with you philosophically, something is off. You can like don't let the energy become dark. It's again, it's all not about like rainbows and unicorns.
Oh,
It's hard
sure.
sometimes.
No.
But if you feel this kind of like hate and feel dirty towards something in your business, like get out, cut it out.
Right. No, you're so true. And I heard you mention something about like reassessing. And I think that that's kind of part of the process. You constantly have to be reassessing, especially as moms. Like, our children are growing, our schedules change, like our energy changes if they're not sleeping, or, we're constantly having to, be pragmatic with whatever is happening that day.
Exactly.
So, do you have any things that, tips that help you kind of navigate that kind of the challenges of having kind of a schedule, especially that can kind of be like untraditional or, unreliable if like your children are sick or you're sick or whatever?
So first thing, that really helped me. So when I started the business, I started from a position of very masculine entrepreneur. Basically, all the things in the world of business, are mostly taught by men, given a perspective of man. Many women are trying to be like man when opening a business. And like that's one way. But again, I talk a lot about markets and economics, and I always apply it into everything else, like the mental health and
Right.
the world of energy. So I recently realized that, okay, you as a woman can try to be like man, run a business like man. And now you're again one point in a huge supply of men trying to run a business. Like the competition is so big there, and you're trying to do it their way, playing by their rules that is already hard for you. And you're competing with like people who, in a way, privileged in the way they do it, right? Or
Right.
you
Yeah.
can try and do the business the women way. It's way less of a competition because, again, less women do business. Most women try to do business the men's way. If you try to run your business the way that nobody else does, you probably have less competition. In my industry,
Yeah.
I'm basically the only female CEO.
I was going to ask about that. It
It's
seems
all
like a very male dominated
it
field.
yeah, it's dudes in
Yeah.
suits. It's like 50-year-old lawyers.
But it's so interesting in that, yeah. And I started an illegal career. So more than 20 years, I know all about how male dominated that is. But I would love to hear your opinion. And I hear that story over and over again about women kind of realizing like they can't do it the way they thought they should because it just doesn't work for them. And so I would love to hear what you think we have unique as women and moms to bring to business that helps us stand out.
Yep. Obviously, we're way more empathetic.
Right.
And you would think you need to be hardcore in business. Not really. You can sell things through empathy. Like this point about family security and family safety that I always talk about, it really comes strong to my male audience because they're like, this is how my wife thinks. And I care about her opinion.
Wow.
And I want to hear this woman mother perspective on the safety of the family. So that's one thing. Also, in operations of the business, I know that I can't do 9 to 5. I care about my energy. So if I feel like I'm burning out, I'm gonna take day off on Tuesday. I'm gonna go play tennis 11 a.m. Wednesday. Like I'm just gonna be way more efficient if I do those things the way I feel them. And how would I expect my team to follow 9 to 5 if I don't do it? So I never expect it from my team either. When I hire people in my job offer, I specifically say, we do not have designated work hours. We are not going to ask you for get shit done by this deadline. No, we're going to tell you, yo, be as efficient as you can. We really expect high discipline from you around your own work. Like this is one of the things that I really talk about. Self-ownership, self-discipline. I don't have to discipline my employees if they're disciplined. I don't have to tell them what to do if they're, if they have the self-ownership of the tasks that they need to get done.
Right.
So that's something I really try to highlight when hiring people. That's why I try to hire from the industry, from like the Jessica that I hired. I slid into her DMs on Twitter. I just followed the girl on Twitter and I kept liking what she has to say. I And I was like, this is just the right energy. And I can see high discipline there too. So we are pretty aligned. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that's what I say. We
That's
don't
how
have
we connected. We must be aligned.
Yeah, I literally just kept sliding into your DMs and
That's
asking her
great.
questions.
Uh-huh.
We don't have scheduled vacations. If
Mm-hmm.
like basically the employee just tells me, "Hey, I'm gonna be out for this week of the month.
Mm-hmm.
I still can get this and this done, but I
Mm-hmm.
won't be able to show up on calls or this or that." And I'm cool with that. Just let me know ahead, and we will work it out. Again, we're
Mm-hmm.
not a 1,700 employees company. We're just
Right.
6 of us now. Um, so that's
And people gravitate to that, right?
for sure. They value it so much, especially
Right.
again, if you're looking for disagreeable people who are problem solvers, who love
Mm-hmm.
the challenge, who wants to get it
Right.
done.
Right.
So you attract certain people.
Mm-hmm.
Some people, like again, I had to fire somebody
Right.
because that was not the way he used to work.
Mm-hmm.
He's very used to very corporate jobs, and I could not provide this babysitting. I could not provide this, like, staying on top of him and
Mm-hmm.
supervising every step.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like he didn't perform, and I had to cut it out.
Right. And I think, the skills that you were talking about that we bring as women, and, we talk about the transferable leadership skills as moms, people are even craving that, especially more after the pandemic. That flexibility and their ability to kind of live and do life more on their terms, but also be an employee, right? Yeah.
When I started this business, I was living in Airbnb. I drove from Miami to San Francisco, and I drove back, and then I drove down to solo trip, the whole thing.
Wow.
And I drove down to Mexico and just hopped around Airbnbs in Mexico. So my business was on the go all the time. I was very flexible with my time. I
Mm-hmm.
was working on weekends when I wanted to. I was taking days off on Wednesday. Like, it's basically I'm getting it done without any schedule.
Right. I love that. Well, Katie, it's been so fascinating and inspiring to like hear your story and just hear how you've done everything. What is a message that you would want to give to mompreneurs listening to this podcast episode, and especially immigrant mompreneurs?
Um, few things that I'm currently experiencing that I'm loving so much that I want to share. Um, First of all, find a way to contribute more time to what you want to do. If it's family, like priorities, right? Your business doesn't always have to grow at a certain rate. Sometimes, if you want, it can take a step back. Sometimes you can even get yourself out of operations completely. Like,
Mm-hmm.
basically, find what's your priority currently.
Yeah.
Your main purpose in life is probably not to build that business. Like,
Yeah. Well, I heard somebody say recently, like, nobody starts a business to run a business, and it's like you still want to be connected to your passion,
yep,
but right.
sometimes where that's where you end up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Find a community that is, ooh, I found something I really want to say. Okay. So as entrepreneurs, we barely understand what's our hourly pay. We never get that.
Mm-hmm.
So try to calculate your hourly pay in the way that, okay, how many hours a week do I work? What's my monthly income?
Mm-hmm.
And then realize, does it really worth it? And if it doesn't, how can you lower the amount of time you spend on it? Or how can you raise your check? This exercise actually really helped a lot of entrepreneurs to realize, hey, I consider myself an expert and I make less money than I could have made without any expertise working a normal job.
Right.
This is not fair. This is not how markets work. They're like, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of entrepreneurs just don't raise their pricing because,
Especially women.
especially women,
They're
just because they
afraid to
don't
charge
realize
too
they're worth.
much.
Yep.
Right. We're not taught to value what we do, or we just don't see the value.
Exactly. And again, the empathy, oh, I don't want to charge them too much. Yeah. Don't count other people's money. The right
Right.
client who is willing to
Right.
pay you will come.
Right.
Calculate your hourly pay. Like, this is so big. And then the great exercise, calculate your current hourly pay.
Mm-hmm.
Then imagine the perfect life where you can afford everything you want, where
Mm-hmm.
you work specific amount of hours that you're willing to work without prioritizing work over family,
Mm-hmm.
and then calculate your perfect hourly pay.
Mm.
And that really helps you to raise your check.
I love that.
So let's say, okay, right now I spent $8,000 on um, mortgage, car, insurance, this, basically all the things that I pay for, and
Mm-hmm.
I work 35 hours a week. And that's my hourly pay. Ideally, I want to be able to afford Birkin, Hermes shoes,
Right.
and all that. And I want to work only 20 hours a week, no more.
Uh-huh.
Um, okay, where am I at now? And
Mm-hmm.
try to go step by step towards that goal. That really helped a lot of my friends to raise their check, to realize that, hey, I make less than I could have made in a very easy corporate job where I would really just had
Right.
to show up.
Mm-hmm.
This is not fair. I have expertise.
Mm-hmm.
I hold so many hats. So that's a good exercise that I recently found. I was like, whoa, this is amazing.
That's
Um,
really great advice.
and the other thing, yeah, in a big picture of things, your business, like, it's super cool that you run this business,
Mm-hmm.
but probably you giving birth to a child who gives birth to another two children who gives birth to another four, like 4 generations from now, you gave birth to like 64 people. So maybe that, and you only have 20 clients a month, like maybe the 64 people is more important, lives of them. So understand that if your business is so stressful
Mm.
that you start doubting yourself as a mom, that you
Mm-hmm.
can't put the enough energy, change it. Like, change it. Not
Yeah.
drop your business or anything. Just find a
Yeah.
way to make it work
Right.
and find help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people who go from a corporate career to starting a business find themselves in that spot because they just duplicate what they know. But Katie, thank you so much. I mean, you're really like badass. So I appreciate that. And it's definitely, we need to, all learn from that. And thanks for modeling that and taking time to talk to me for today. I loved it.
Absolutely. No, I'm definitely honored to be here. I've been on so many podcasts, never been on a female-led podcast before.
Oh,
That's,
awesome. Are you serious? That's
yep.
wonderful.
Yeah, pretty
That's
cool.
great. So, where can my listeners connect with you and see all your badassery?
So my business is planbpassport.com.
Uh-huh.
You can find me on Twitter as Katie the Russian. You can find me on Instagram as the Universe of Katie. And I'm pretty responsive in my DMs on both. Happy to
Nice.
answer questions. Really, really love talking to other girls, entrepreneurs. Absolutely love brainstorming on this stage of the business from like 0 to 1. That's my
Right.
favorite.
Yeah,
Like,
and it's a different energy from just starting a business to kind of going to the next phase and growing it. It is really an interesting part, and there's so much to learn in those initial phases, and it feels so hard, but it's so worth it, right?
and for me, that's the most challenging, I feel like, and the most fun. And I know how to do it like so cheap. It's almost like it costs $25 to start a business in
Right.
2023.
I know,
Like,
that's what I say. 20 years ago, you would have had a legitimate excuse that you couldn't start a business because you had to have a storefront and employees and all this stuff. And now I think it's really us in our own mind that is in the way if you want to start a business. Because if you got a laptop and a phone, you
good
don't,
to go.
yeah, right. You don't even need a phone. So,
Seriously.
or you could do it with just a phone.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot less obstacles than there used to be. So I, take it as an opportunity and a challenge to grow personally so you can reach those goals, right?
For sure. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you so
had fun
much. It
being
was
here.
wonderful meeting you, and we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you so much to Katie and Ananina again for sharing time with me and sharing your inspirational story and wisdom about how you started and grew your business. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found it inspiring and helpful. Please, again, I invite you to leave a review for the podcast, share the episode, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Because next week, I have another amazing mompreneur interview coming your way, coming in hot with lots of tips and insight and inspiration for you to gain confidence or sustain your confidence to start and grow your business. Because you can do it. You can be a great mom and an entrepreneur. So, thank you so much for joining me. I am so grateful for all of my listeners and all of the people who reach out to me to be on the show and share how shows impacted them. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on my website and all my social media contacts, and you can email me. My website is mombusinesscoach.com. I'd love to hear from you. You can find my link to Instagram there. And with that, I can't wait to talk to you next week and bring you another amazing interview. But also on Friday, I started a new bonus episode that's very short with actionable tips on things that you can implement right now to start and grow your business. So thank you so much for joining me. I will talk to you next time. Bye.